Hey everybody, how you doing? So today I want to review the RPM85 made by Rockville. I've had it for about a week now, and I've definitely cranked it up, put it through its paces. Um, I believe it's 300 watts at 4 ohms and 225, give or take, at 8 ohms. And right now I have some old PV-SP2s that are 8 ohms a piece plugged into it, so I got 4 ohms ultimately, so I should have 300 watts of cranking power. But basically you have 8 channels. Each channel has, this is a little bit blurry because I'm trying to get in there. Each channel obviously has its own gain, its own volume, treble and bass, and it has reverb, but it's not really reverb, it's just echo. It sends the signal right here to the effects controller, so you can turn up how wet the effect is or how dry it is by the volume. You can turn up the echo and the delay. So the echo is basically like speed control, kind of like an old tremolo control. You can control how fast or slow it goes, and then the delay is I guess the space between each echo. So I don't really, it's kind of unnecessary. They should have just given us, who owns this, regular old reverb. That would have been fine. They didn't really have to do the echo effect. But I'll be honest with you, so far that's the only downfall. I don't need any effects from this at all. But for those of you who may need effects, you're better off buying an effects unit and running it through this instead of relying on this tiny little not so good effects control. So there's that. So basically you have 8 channels. Each channel is identical with treble and bass, its volume, and its reverb that sends the signal over to the effects that I just described. It has your typical 1/4 inch line in, and it has your mic input. But what's nice is they do give you, block this blue light here, they do give you phantom power, which is nice. I think it's, I want to say 25 volt or something along that. Don't quote me. You'll have to look the specs up. But it's nice that they do provide that. My old power head, which I still have, it was an old custom KPM 7200, not 7250. Still works. It works great. The thing was awesome. But I wanted something with Bluetooth in it, so that's why I'm describing this now. So it also has this, they call it MP3, but it's basically any other input that you want to put into this thing rather than a line source or a mic source. So you can put an SD card in there, you can plug USB in, which is nice, and you can also Bluetooth your phone or anything you want that has Bluetooth over to it, which is great. They even give you a little remote control that you can fiddle around with, which is really nice. So far, I'm pretty impressed with it. This thing does crank very loud. I mean, it's very loud. I think halfway is as loud as I've had it so far. You get a nice 5-band EQ, 60, 250, 800, 2K, and 8K, which is nice. My old head had a couple more, but I found that just a little bit of adjustment, you can find that nice happy medium. Right now I'm running both cables from my Alesis Nitro Mesh kit in here. This is from my computer, my laptop, and These two are from my record player. Now on the back of this thing, which I can't show you because everything's all hooked up, you have your A and B speaker outs. I don't know. So now it's A and B. It used to be left and right. So if you were running mono speakers, you knew to use the left side. And I wrote them to ask them, you know, if I'm running speakers parallel and I only want to use one of the two outputs, which one do I use? I personally chose A. I figured A was left, and I haven't had a problem so far. Again, it's 300 watts at 4 ohms and 225, I think, at 8. But the thing that concerns me that they don't explain, at least with the older stuff, you know that you plug two 8-ohm speakers in parallel, it comes out to, it's a 4-ohm load on the amp. So if they're saying 4-ohm load for A and B speaker output at 300 watts each, now that becomes a 2-ohm load ultimately on the head. And I've only ever seen 2-ohm loads on very professional power amps and bass guitar amps. So that's something I personally would like some clarification on, if they would ever write me back. I understand now everything that's going on with this virus and stuff. They're probably not even at work. So I understand why they haven't written me back yet. It'd be nice to know that. So just to play it safe, I'm just running a single 4-ohm load into one of the two jacks. But for me, it doesn't matter. Like I said, I have my speakers daisy chained, so it equals 4 ohms in the end. There is an effect. I think it's a single quarter-inch jack on the back. I think it's a stereo jack, so you can have an output and an input by using just one single ring tip sleeve jack to an effect of your choosing. I've never personally used something like that. I've only used typical effects loops where you have the preamp out and power amp back in or whatever, meaning two cables. I've never had to use a single stereo cable in and out to accomplish the same thing. You have your A and B speaker outputs, and what's nice, they give you a line out in the back so you can run that to anything that's at a line level. So I also have that running to some powered speakers that I have to provide those with a line level signal, and then they do the powering instead of the head doing the powering. So I have two 8-ohm PVSP2s unpowered being powered by this, and I also have a subwoofer and another monitor type speaker being fed signal through the line out in the back, and so far it's working really well. And on the back of this, there's also I can't remember the name, your regular red and white input for like a record player or something like that. I'm using these for my record player because I have more control over the signal, the sound of it, the volume of it. You know, I have more control. But you can absolutely run an additional secondary input source in the back of it, and then you can use right here the aux volume to control that. So overall, this thing is, I'm very satisfied with it. Mind you, I've only had it for a week. You know, a month from now it could break. I have no idea, but so far I'm pretty pleased with the quality. Knobs feel like every knob on every power head I've ever had. Plastic, you know, nothing. I'm not surprised by that. What I do like are the 1/4-inch jacks are all steel. You know, they're all metal, which is nice. A lot of times they use plastic ones now with plastic nuts on them, and then they dry out and crack like everything else that's plastic. I don't have it cranked right now, and these lights are kind of messing things up, but they do give you a little, sorry, I'm trying to cover this blue light up here so we can actually see. There's a meter right there. If I had this cranked, you'd see the meter go from green up to yellow right before it starts to clip. Red is plus 3 dB, which you don't want. I haven't had it past the first green light at the loudest I want to do it in my house, so that tells you how loud this thing can crank. It does have a fan, which you can probably hear, but I'm actually glad. My old power amp didn't have a fan. It just had heatsink fins in the back. So the fan is probably a better, you know, it's just a better deal. Keep things as cool as possible. It sounds loud because I'm right next to it and because the music's really low, but as soon as I turn that up, that all disappears. It's no louder than any fan I've had in any amplifier, guitar amp, bass amp. They all sound like that. So, just for knowledge purposes, I have that line out in the back that I described going into a splitter to turn it into 2. That way I can run the signal that I want going right to the subwoofer off of this side of this equalizer, and then the stuff for the monitor I have going to this side of the equalizer, and it works out great. And you can also adjust some of the volume and whatnot from these output level knobs. But you don't need an equalizer. I just have it to continue fine-tuning sound and balance and everything you want to have a full, beautifully sounding, loud sound system. So, but anyway, I hope I answered most of your questions. And I definitely give this thing a 9 out of 10 because nothing's ever perfect. But in a year from now, we'll really see how it is. But compared to the other power heads that were in the $160 range and 8 channels, I didn't need, you know, I don't need a 32 channel mixer. You know, I just needed enough to plug all my few things into, and that was loud enough to, you know, mix in with my guitar playing and bass playing and drum playing and everything else that I like to do. So far I'm pretty impressed. So, all right, well, thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.